Razer, a company that for the past few years has been knocking its products out of the park and has created some of the best separation in its products for casual and more enthusiastic players. Just take a look at this lineup. For keyboards, you have that feature-rich mechanical Black Widow, and then the no-frills, built-for-speed optical switch Huntsman line. In the audio department, you have those vibrating chroma-rich Kraken headphones. And then for the more enthusiastic esports crowd, you got that lightweight Triforce-driven Black Sharks, some of my favorite personal headphones. Now for mice, you have that super light Viper line, and now the Cobra. Wait, the Viper and the Cobra. That's right, guys, today we have the Razer Cobra in-house. However, it does look noticeably similar to the Razer Viper Mini. So what exactly is the difference between these two guys? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Alright guys, the first thing we want to look at here is going to be the box. We have a pretty standard Razer box, and honestly I'm not expecting much considering that it's only $40 US. Let's see here. In the front of the box it says 58 grams, new Gen 3 switches, 8500 DPI sensor, and still using that same SpeedFlex cable. I'll also always support a company that puts those easy open tabs on the boxes. And let's see, inside here we have the manual, the mouse wrapped up, and that's about it. Okay, let's just pull the tab off this USB end here. And I'm still happy to see that Razer's putting the green inside that USB. Always a nice little touch. And that's all you have. All right. And right out of the box, you can see that this mouse looks very similar to the Razer Viper Mini, with some different middle sections it looks like, and some material kind of more basculous looking. Flipping it over, you can see the Cobra branding. It's got 3 PTFE feet, and putting the Cobra right next to the Viper, you can clearly see that that middle section is the only visible difference if you look at it from this angle. Now, the first thing I did notice by putting my hands on the Cobra was that it seemed to actually fill out my hand a little bit more than the Mini, which honestly brings us to the only real differences between the Cobra and the Viper Mini. The Cobra's length is 119.6 millimeters, the width of 62.5 millimeters, it has a height of 38.1 millimeters, and it's coming in at 58 grams. Where the Viper Mini's length is 118.3 millimeters, a width of 61.4 millimeters, and a height of 38.3 millimeters, and this one comes in at 61 grams. So that's the slight width difference is the only real true difference that I can truly feel in hand. And as a claw grip, I do prefer the Cobra's wider sides. Tech and sensor wise, I'm sure that they're both based off the Pixar 3359, which you'll find in the Viper Mini. It's a sensor with 8500 DPI, 1000 Hz polling, 300 IPS, and 35G max acceleration, so I'm sure they use the same sensor. And there is a few little tiny differences here and there. In terms of build quality, they do appear to be made out of the same material. I've had absolutely no issues with flexing or creaking. I've had no flex or wobbling on mouse 1 and 2. Outside of that middle separation part being made out of a different material, a little bit more shiny, I've noticed that both the scroll wheels have the same texture, but the Cobra does feel to be a little bit tighter on its scroll. I don't know if that's just because it's brand new, but it does feel to be a little tighter. I also noticed that the Cobra has a PTFE ring around the sensor, which I actually like. And there's now a bit of a gap between the side buttons, which of course now is going to bring us to the new Gen 3 switches in the Cobra. And yeah, they sound and feel better. Definitely an improvement. And plugging in the Cobra, dealing with Synapse, I hopped in some Battlefield 2042, and even during gameplay that I could tell that the Cobra's slight size difference was filling my hand more than when I would use the Viper Mini. And I even ended up with the most kills in that round. So despite the name change and the subtle size differences, what do I actually think of the Razer Cobra? Do I actually think it's a bad mouse? No, not at all. But if you've read anything about this release, you would see that this mouse has had its fair share of drama. This release, put it plainly, was just confusing. So confusing, in fact, that the CEO of Razer had to actually make a statement on his Instagram. Now, I'm not going to read it, you can just go ahead and pause it here and kind of get an idea of what he was trying to say. But where this drama mainly stems from, at least for me, is that Razer decided to completely remove the Viper Mini from its lineup with no direct replacement for it, well, instead of this new Cobra. But actually gave us no insight to what the Viper Mini line would end up looking like outside of the ridiculous drop-only Razer Viper Mini SE, which I don't think anybody outside of Razer enthusiasts or just pure mouse enthusiasts are really gonna buy. It's just too expensive. But make no mistake, I'm actually all in favor of a feature-packed mouse that's not super lightweight, that's not feature-packed, that's got its RGB, and I do think those mice have their place. And honestly, this release kind of reminds me of the issues with the Death Adder V3 that I had. They took that beloved shape and one of my absolute personal favorite mice, and they turned it into an esports-centric, lightweight mouse that had a completely different shape that I actually am not a big fan of. And it just makes me kind of feel uneasy about some of the changes that Razer is going to end up doing with some of my favorite mice that they have in their lineup. So at one point it could be the Death Adder, the next moment it's going to be the Viper Mini, and then I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they'll make the Basilisk V4 and they'll turn it into a completely different thing other than a Logitech clone. I don't know. But to wind it back down, at the end of the day, should you buy the Cobra Wired? And yeah, absolutely. If you haven't picked up a Viper Mini in the past, it's essentially the same mouse. It could have easily just been called the Viper Mini V2. And yeah, it's slightly lighter. It does have those little differences, which I actually prefer. And I actually think the switches feel much, much better. But Razer, I beg you, please do not keep making these marketing mistakes because your products are actually really good, and this mouse didn't deserve the hate that it got. Alright guys, that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you thought this video was helpful, and subscribe because, well, you're awesome. And that's going to do it for me. I'll catch you in the next one.